This is CBSE Class 10 Science. Most important questions for board exams. Why these are most important? Because these questions have come again and again in the examination. The first question is, write chemical equation of the reaction of ethanoic acid with the following. So ethanoic acid, when it combines with sodium hydroxide or ethanol, and we have to also name, that is name of one main product of each reaction. This has come in 2016-2017. Now this is your ethanoic acid. Ethanoic acid is CH3COOH. Now when it combines with sodium, it gives you sodium ethanoate or called as sodium acetate along with hydrogen. When it combines with sodium hydroxide, that is NaOH, sodium hydroxide. This is ethanoic acid. It gives you CH3COONA, which is again sodium ethanoate or sodium acetate along with water. The third one, when it combines with ethanol, that is CH3COOH, ethanoic acid, when combines with the ethanol, it gives you ester, also called as ethyl ethanoate, CH3COO C2H5 along with water. List two reasons for the appearance of variations among the progeny found by sexual reproduction. This is the first question, then we'll take the other part also, which is the second part. So let us go along with the first part. List two reasons for the appearance of variations among the progeny found by sexual reproduction. So when there is a sexual reproduction, that is Sambhog Kriya, then what are the two reasons for appearance of variation? Why the progeny or the next generation is having different appearance? So the major reason for this is, you can write like this, the major reason for the appearance of variation among the progeny found by the sexual reproduction is first the crossing over, which is the process in which the DNA is exchanged between the homologous chromosomes during meiosis, and this causes variation in the progeny. The second is the progeny, that is the upcoming species formed due to sexual reproduction has characteristic from the mother as well as the father. Therefore, because of this, the characteristics differ and they result in the variations. Now the second part is for the plant. Name the part marked A in the diagram. What is this A? This is called the pollen grains. This A is pollen grains. How does A reach part B? How does A reach part B? And this is A reach part B through the process of pollination. There are various ways, method by which the pollination occurs. It can be wind, it can be some insect, it can be some titli, butterfly, etc. This B, what is this B? B is stigma of the carpel. Third is, state the importance of the part C, which is this part, which is a kind of tube that take this stuff inside. So this C is called the pollen tube. This is called as a pollen tube, and it helps in reaching the male gamete from here to this space, which is the egg ovule. Next is, what happens to the part marked D after fertilization is over? This question has repeated in 2014 and 2016. So what happens? This D, this portion, C, this portion. Now here D is egg. So after it fertilizes, the egg divides several times and form an embryo within this ovule. How do Mendel's experiments show that traits are inherited independently? It is repeated in 2016, 2017. So this Mendel, he was a scientist. So he first crossed pure tall plants. That is, he took the peas into account. Matar ka paudha. So the dominant traits are shown here and recessive traits are shown here. So when Mendel first crossed pure these tall plants, he found that only tall plants produced in the first generation, that is called F1. Dwarf means, long means this tall long, dwarf means short. No dwarf peas plant were obtained in the first generation of progeny, that is the coming species. When F1 tall plants, that is this one, were self-pollinated, Mendel got tall and dwarf plants in F2 generation, which is 3:1. So this shows that the traits are inherited independently. So this is how the operation occurs. You can have a look here, and if you want to show, you can show like this also. So this is the reason. List 4 stakeholders which may be helpful in the conservation of forest 2016-2015. So the local people living in the villages or near the villages, that is, this is a forest. Those who are living in the vicinity here, these are the stakeholders, that is, they have stake in the forest also, so they will be helpful in conserving the forest. Also, the industrialist who use forest produce as raw material. We know that all the primary activities, they involves either agriculture products or the raw materials from the forest. When we talk about industrialist, we are talking about the secondary activity, and secondary activity is totally dependent on the primary activity, which is the agriculture of forest product. So the industrialists are directly involved with the raw material which is obtained from the forest. Then the wildlife and nature enthusiast, that is those people, those activists who are involved, who are thinking about the forest and the wildlife, they are the stakeholder, along with the forest department of the government, the state government, central government. There is a department which takes care of this forest, and they are also the stakeholder. Now this question is repeated in 2012, 2014, 2015 and also repeated in coming years. So why is sustainable management of natural resources necessary? Out of the two methods, reuse and recycle, which one would you suggest practicing and why? So the answer here is, first is the management of resources in such a way that present day needs of the population are justified, as well as they remain available for future generation. That is, if you have 100 rupees right now and you spend it today and you have this for whole month, say, what are you going to do for the rest of the month? Same thing comes with the natural resources. Natural resources are limited. They take a long time to replenish themselves, and there are certain natural resources which take millions of years to be formed, like the minerals. So management of resources is very important, because right now the population, whatever it needs in a requisite amount, justified amount, they can use, but they need to keep something for the future generation. For example, if you have 100 rupees, spend say 2 rupees now. Next day you can spend 4 rupees. Like this you can go for whole month. Otherwise you will fall short of money, and that will be a real trouble. Then the type of management which encourages utilization of resources that meet current basic human needs, resources for the needs of future generation, means right now I am using it. What about my kids? Say for example, my kid is also having some of the natural resources, but what will happen to the kid of my kid? He will be left with nothing. Right now we are using the petroleum, and in few years the sources of petroleum will vanish, or the nature will not be able to replenish. It takes 1,000 million years. So this is why it is important, sustainable management of natural resources. Now reuse is better. Why? Because if you talk about reuse and recycle, reuse is better because reuse does not consume energy. If you want to recycle it, you have to have the used material, then you have to put all the effort, energy and money so that you can recycle it. So recycle takes money. It involves effort and also revenue. But reuse does not involve energy. So that is how you are actually not you are consuming, you are not spreading energy or thriving energy. Actually you are saving energy, and the energy saved is energy produced. Now coming to the sustainable management, as we are talking about, it encourages all form of growth that are needed to meet basic human needs while conserving natural resources for the future generation. We just discussed about this, because Our natural resources are exhaustible, they are limited, they are non-renewable. I'm not saying non-renewable, that means they will never be renewed. They will be renewed, but in million years. So the things which are available to us are fixed for some time. We need to keep it for long, for our future generation, not for 50 or 100 years, but for 500, 1000 years. We have to think about that. Our resources are being very overexploited. That is, a person in America, he uses everything than a person in Uganda. That is, the natural resource or the resource utilization by a person in the developed country is far more than the person who uses in any developing country. So the overexploitation, that is shoshan of resources, are taking place because of one more aspect, that is the growing population, and there is no equitable distribution of resources. As I said, the handful of people, rich people who have money in their pocket, powerful people, they are over exploiting the benefits. That is, just for short-term benefits, gain or fun, they are using it. So it is necessary to have sustainable management. What is homologous series of carbon compounds? Write the molecular formula of two consecutive members of homologous series of aldehydes. State which part of these compounds determine their physical and chemical properties. Now this question is also repeated 2012, 2014 in recent years also. So a homologous series may be defined as the family of organic compounds having the same functional group. So the functional group is same, and the successive, that is the one, then the adjacent one, then the next one, that is the coming one, members of which differ by CH2 unit or 14 mass unit. Two consecutive members of homologous series, this is being asked. So you can, of these aldehydes is CH3CHO and C2H5CHO. A carbon compound is made up of two parts, RF. R is the hydrocarbon part and F is the functional group part. So this R, this is the hydrocarbon part, determines the physical properties of the compound, and this F, functional group, determines the chemical properties of the compounds. I can give you an example. You can give examples like this. For example, alkanes, their general formula is CnH2n plus 2. For methane, ethane, if you see the difference of these two, it will be CnH2n plus 1. I'll just give an example of this alkane. Say CnH2n plus 1. Now I'm taking N as 1. So C1H 2 into 1 plus 2 into 1. That is 2 into 1 is plus 2. So 2 into 1 is 2 plus 2. So CH4 is the first one. What will be the second one? Now I'm putting N as 2. So C2. What is there? 2 into 2 plus 2. So 2 to the 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. So C2H6. And this is what goes on like this. So that is why they are homologous series of carbon compounds. Alkanes, alkenes, alcohol, carboxylic acids. What is vegetative propagation? Write two of its advantages. This came in 2011, 2012. After that also it has come multiple times. So vegetative propagation is practiced for growing some types of plants. There are certain types of plants where this vegetative propagation is used because plants grown by this method bear flowers and fruits earlier than the plants grown from seeds. So if seeds, say it takes say 5 months, this vegetative propagation will give you the flower and fruit in 2 months. I'm taking an example. So plants grown by this method are genetically similar to the parent plant, and they have some characteristics this method makes, or this is important because the propagation of plant which have lost the ability to produce seed. So you just take an example, a plant is there and now it cannot produce seed. What will happen? How we are going to get the next offspring of this plant? Vegetative propagation. Survival rates of plants grown by this method is more than that of seed grown plants, or survival rates it should be. Now let me show you, this is how it is done. So this is a plant, we cut it in slant and now we try to grow it. Similarly here also, this is the way, cutting it like this and growing it using plant cuttings to produce plants from the existing plant. This is vegetative propagation. Explain AIDS. List any 4 methods of prevention and control of AIDS. So this has come multiple years. So this question is also important. AIDS stands for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Now this AIDS is a disease which makes a person immune system weak, and the immune system is that system which fights from the outer microorganism like viruses, bacteria, etc. So if your body gets weakened by this AIDS, that is, you are not able to fight with the outside viruses and you can say the diseases which are there in the environment. So HIV, it comes as HIV positive. There is a test. If you are HIV positive, that means you are carrying this AIDS. So there are 4 methods of preventing, and there are multiple methods actually of preventing and controlling the AIDS. First is avoid contact with infected blood. That means if the blood is infected, that is, blood has already HIV positive, and now someone else is using that blood, then it's highly possible that the person is going to get infected by the HIV. Now, whenever we are using syringe or any surgical equipment, if it is used on a person who is HIV positive and it is used on a person which is not, it is highly possible that this infection could get into the other person. Use condoms. It can be female condoms, it can be male condoms. Whenever you are having sex, use the condoms. That is, if you have one partner, it is okay. If you have multiple partners, just do sex but use condoms. Get tested and treated for STDs. STDs is sexually transmitted disease. So let me show you HIV infection can be propagated or can be transferred through unprotected sexual intercourse if the partner is infected. If you don't know that your partner is infected or not, rather than having fun for 5 minutes and repenting it for entire life, use a condom. This is a transmission from mother to child in utero during delivery and breast milk. From mother to child, it will be transferred. And when the injected drug use infected blood or the products, like all those which can transfer from one body to another, this causes the HIV infection. Na, Mg, Al are the elements having 1, 2, 3 valence electrons respectively. Which of these elements have the largest atomic radius? So we have sodium, magnesium and aluminium. So sodium is the answer for the first part. The reason is the atomic size decreases from left to right due to the increase in the nuclear charge. This is the first explanation. NaMgL, which is the least reactive. So aluminium, Al, is the least reactive. This question is also coming again and again. So the reason is the tendency to lose electron decreases from left to right. That is why aluminium is the least reactive. List and explain in brief 3 methods of contraception. Contraception means if you are having sex or if you had sex and it is possibility that you can be pregnant. What are you going to do? What are the possibilities? So there are 4 methods: mechanical or barrier method, or male or female condoms. This is the best. That is not non-invasive. Just use condom and you can just throw it. Use of hormonal preparations like the oral pills, eye pills, Saheli. There are pills which are effective for 72 hours. That means if you just had sex, then for these 72 years in between you can take this pill. That is, a woman can take pill, girl can take pill, and she'll not be pregnant. Use of loop or copper T, that is IUCD. This is called intrauterine contraceptive device, IUCD or IUD, we call it as intrauterine device. Surgical method, that is invasive method for tubectomy or vasectomy, that is called nasbandi. This can also be done. I'll show you so that you remember more. These are the types of contraception. These are the barrier ones like condoms, spermicide, female condoms, the diaphragm and the vaginal sponge. There are hormonal contraceptives, that is, you take it as a pill like this or as an injection. So the pill, the progesterone, only mini pill, the After fill map, the contraceptive patch in different forms, and the contraceptive injection or implant can be there. There is third thing which is called intrauterine contraceptives. It is placed inside the uterus so that this combination of male and female product cannot take place that can create an embryo. Permanent contraception, just vasectomy, that is nasbandi. The sperm will not come out from the male part, and the tubal ligation, this is for females. List in tabular form the distinguishing factors between acquired traits and inherited traits with one example of each. So this is repeated all these years. Let me give you an example. Your mother and your father. Say your mother has some skin color and your father has some skin color, or he has some brown hairs. Your father has brown hairs and you also have a brown hair. Your mother has some special look of lips and you also have that broad lips or short lips or eyes. So this is what you got from your parents, and this is what you have inherited from your parents. So this is the inherited one. Now once you decide you are adult, now you decide that okay, I will go for learning guitar. Now you learn the guitar and you are overweight and you decided to walk, run and then to lose weight. So these two traits or characteristics which you acquired, they are called the acquired traits. They are not the inherited traits. So acquired traits does not bring about any change in the DNA of the germ cell, and it cannot be passed on to the progeny, that is the offspring. That means it has no impact on the evolution. For example, acquiring knowledge, loss of weight, these are the example. And inherited traits or characteristics or features means those you have got from your mother or your father directly, that brings about change in DNA of the germ cell, and it can be passed to the progeny. That means your kid might have the same hair as your father would have, and this is impacting or affecting the direct evolution. For example, your skin color of the eye, these are the examples. We can also, because the question is saying tabular form, so you can form a table also. And these are inherited traits, these are heritable variations, and this produces changes in the reproductive tissues and can be passed to the next generation. For example, the height. While we talk about acquired traits, these are non-heritable, and this produces changes in the non-reproductive tissues. That is, you just get it and you don't transfer it to your, possibly not to your progeny. And it cannot be passed to the next generation. And for example, if you do powerlifting, have some good muscle, that doesn't mean that your kid will also be going to have that. A 4 centimeter tall object is placed perpendicular to the principal axis of convex lens of focal length 24 centimeter. The distance of the object from the lens is 16 centimeter. Find the position, size and nature of the image being formed using the lens formula. So this is also repeated. Here is an object which is 4 centimeter tall. The object is 4 centimeter tall. Now, this is placed perpendicular to the principal axis of a convex lens of focal length 24 centimeter. So we have a lens and there is a tall object around 4 centimeter, and this is placed to the principal axis. This is principal axis of the convex lens we are talking about, and the focal length of this is 24 centimeter. Now the focal length is plus 24 centimeter we take according to our sign conventions, and the distance of the object from the lens is 16 centimeter. So the distance is 16 centimeter. We take it as u as minus 16 centimeter, and if you take this 16 and 24 and you have to take the modulus. We need to see what is the relationship between them, and we observe that this u 16 centimeter, which is the modulus, that is we are taking the magnitude, 16 is less than 24. This means the object is lying between the focus and the C, that is the position in this position, the object of the ray from object cannot meet at any point on the other side of the lens, which is also clear from the position of the image. We'll just tell you about the lens formula. V is uf by u plus f. You can write it as 1 by u, 1 by f, what you have learned. But here you have to take minus 16 and f has to be 24, and then we have minus 16 plus 24, that comes to be minus 48. So u was minus 16 and v has come to minus 48. U was minus 16 and we employed this f here. Now this negative sign is showing, this negative sign means that the image will be formed on the same side of the lens where the object is placed. So object is placed here and the image will be formed here. Now what is the linear magnification? We know that the magnification is the V by U or I by O. That is this minus 48 by minus 16, which is coming to be plus 3. And this plus 3 is the magnification. And how about I? If you want to find out I by O is 3. So I can be found out using O into 3, and O is nothing but initially it was 4 centimeter. 4 into 3, that is going to be 12. So 12 centimeter. And since this M is your positive and M is also greater than 1, that is the image will be virtual, erect and magnified. What is the function of ozone at the higher level of atmosphere? So ozone layer, or we also call it as the ozone shield. If you see here, this is ozone layer or ozone shield. This is the region of Earth atmosphere. The part is called stratosphere. You know, we have TSMTE like this, like troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, like this it goes. Finally the exosphere. So this is thermosphere. So there is a part of stratosphere where ozone is there, that is the region. So this contains, why it is called as ozone layer or ozone part? Because it contains a very high concentration of O3, that is ozone gas, and in relation to the other parts of the atmosphere. What is the main function or job of this ozone layer? This is to filter the sunlight which is coming, and especially the sun's ultraviolet parabangani kirane, ultraviolet radiation UVB. So actually it is absorbing, or you can say filtering out this UVB radiations which are very harmful. So protecting the earth from its harmful effect, it's very harmful, especially to the people, to the flora and fauna, and plays a key role in regulating also the temperature of the earth atmosphere, without which it wouldn't have been difficult to life forms to survive like us. If this parabangani kirane or ultraviolet rays comes to us directly, we will not be able to, our skin will have all these skin disease, etc. So let me show you with another picture here. So here we have the ozone layer, and here this UVC is 100% absorbed, UVB is 95% absorbed, and UAV 5% it goes. And these are the layering A, B, C, or you can say the Vargikaran classification. And this is somewhat bearable, but this cannot be bared by the living organisms here. And this is how ozone helps us. And the aerosols, chlorofluorocarbon type of thing which we are using, and that is actually spoiling, or scientists have also found a hole in the ozone, especially over the New Zealand area, and that is very terrible and destructive if it grows for the people who are living on this globe. Now this question is coming again and again. Recent years also it has come. It's basically a general knowledge question. The time difference between actual sunset and apparent sunset is about 2 minutes. What is the reason for the same? Explain the help of a diagram. Means what happens that actual time which we have found and apparent which you see, apparently which you see, and actually what has been done, there is a difference of 2 minutes. What is the reason for the same? And the question also adds, sometimes you will see in the later discussion that this question will also ask about the color, that why it is orange in the evening time. So what happens here is, Sun rays, they bend slightly towards the earth's surface when it is below the horizon due to the presence of various layers of atmosphere, which refracts. These are the refracting of lights, and we always know when from one medium to another the light goes, it bends or shifts, and that is called the refraction. So it refracts the sunlight in various amount towards the earth's surface. Here is the observer. So how it actually bends, right? So this is because of the refraction of the light, as I just suggested, from the sun by the earth atmosphere. The earth atmosphere bends the path of light so that we see the sun in a position slightly different from what it really is. That is, when it bends like this, as an observer, I can see it like this. I see that my view is here. This is what apparent sun is, apparent, what we see. But actually it is rising sun like this. And because it is bending and because of the light properties, we see it here. So the magnitude of this effect varies with the latitude, with the Akshansh, but it is strongest at the equator, that is the Vishuvat Vrit, where sun rises 2 minutes earlier than it would if the earth had no atmosphere. So and that sets 2 minutes after it would if the earth had no atmosphere. So there are, let me tell you again, this is our earth and there are different layers here, earth, atmosphere layers. Now these all have different density, different properties. So when it comes here, it bends like this. So apparent view is somewhat like this. And here the difference is 2 minutes. So somewhat, realistically it's 2 minutes. Why are forests considered biodiversity hotspots? List 2 ways in which an individual can effectively contribute to the management of forest and wildlife. Let me tell you what is this biodiversity. Biodiversity means, bio means earth, a position in earth where diverse organisms, plant and every other living being lives in harmony. Diverse means vividta, jaiva vividta. So everything which is live and they are different, they live together. There is a place called, and that is called the biodiversity. And why they are hotspot? So because there are large number of life forms and there are range of life forms, like it starts from very small, like bacteria, fungi, nematodes, fern, insects, bird, reptiles, mammals, the gymnosperms, angiosperms, they are found there in the biodiverse area. So a region or a place where large biodiversity of endangered species, where this is very important, endangered species, many of them being highly endemic, that is those are found in that place only, no other place they are found, and such regions being subjected to large scale destruction by us, by the people, by poachers. There are so many reasons. They are designed as hotspots by the ecologists just to save these species and to stop all the things which are being done by the people who are trying to destroy the actual living habitat of these all life forms, large range of life forms. So this is a picture showing the biodiversity hotspots among or around the world. What are the ways? First of all, we don't want the trees to be cut. So there should be strict restriction on trees being cut. And to make people, especially the kids, to make them aware that how this forest and wildlife is important to us. If they are not there, we wouldn't be able to survive. And we shouldn't use the wildlife products like the fur coat. People who are rich, they use the fur of very endangered species animal just to show that okay, they are rich. But all these things, if we stop using it, people will not be making it, and not making it means they will not be killing these animals for their fur and coat, which is very expensive when they come into the market. Now this question is also being repeated. We see eyes in planaria, insects, octopus and vertebrates. Can eyes be grouped together in case of the above mentioned animals to establish a common evolutionary origin? Why? There is one more part. First, let me answer the first part. So the eyes which seen in planaria, insect, octopus, vertebrates vary greatly in their structure. So they are quite different. And these organisms can be used for studying evolution of eyes, as the eyes planaria are simple without lens. Insects have compound eyes and vertebrates have highly specialized eyes. However, all of them perform the same function of viewing, seeing, vision. Therefore, a common evolutionary origin can be established. Yes, it can be established. The second part is state one evidence to prove that birds have evolved from reptiles. Bird has come from reptiles. So bird, like reptiles, they have wings. We have seen the wings. So the reptiles also has some commonality between birds and reptiles have some similarity. Although the way the wings are used is different because it was used for providing insulation from cold in case of reptiles, while it is used for flight in case of the bird. But this shows that these wings are analogous organs and the reptiles and birds adapted in a similar manner in some hostile conditions. Write the number of vertical columns in the modern periodic table. What are these columns called? This is also repeated again and again. So the vertical columns, if you make a table, always remember these are the columns. When you take these, means this one, these are called rows. So the vertical column in the modern periodic table, these are known as groups. These are known as groups. And there are 18 groups in the modern periodic table. So that is what? The answer is 18 actually. What is meant by biodiversity? So we saw this question just now, but still it is being asked so many times. We are again discussing. So there are certain questions which are going to come again and again. What is meant by biodiversity? List two advantages of conserving forest and wildlife. So biodiversity, Jaib Vividta. This refers to the variety of living organisms present in a given ecosystem. This includes all the marine also, terrestrial organisms also. And the biodiversity, bio means which have life and diversity means they are different. So biodiversity of an area is measured by counting the number of species, different kind of diverse species found in that particular area. Now, what are the advantages of conserving forest and wildlife? While we conserve the forest, that first of all, when we have these trees, so they bind the soil. So they prevent if the water and wind comes, and they want to take this upper layer of the earth crust, it will not be possible because it prevents trees, forests prevent soil erosion and floods. If water also is coming, then these trees are capable enough to stop them. It produces huge amount of raw materials for the industries. All the industries, especially the secondary sector, they are mainly dependent on agriculture products and the products from the forest. Advantages of conserving the wildlife. Why would you want to conserve the wildlife? First of all, it preserves different kind of species and therefore maintains the species diversity. It helps in maintaining the ecological balance that is required for supporting life. There is a food chain. Okay, we have grass here. Now this say some herbivore animal, it eats the grass. Then we have the carnivore. It eats the herbivore. And this goes on and on. This is just, I've taken 3, but there is a long chain here. This is a food chain. So this food chain has been created by our God, if you call it as the nature, Mother Nature. Now this, if we just kill them, herbivores, what will happen to carnivores? They cannot eat the grass. If you kill the carnivores, the herbivores will be so many, they will eat all this stuff and they will be in great population. So there is a kind of check and balance being created by the Mother Nature. So we need to keep or conserve forest and wildlife because we are also the part of this food chain. Write the name and formula of the second member of homologous series having general formula CnH2n plus 2. So CnH2n plus 2. What is the first one? Take n as 1. N equals 1. So it will be C1 plus H2 into 1 plus 2. This will be CH 2 plus 2 4. And now coming to n equals 2. So C2 H2 into 2 plus 2. So C2H4 plus 2 6. C2H6, it's ethane. Write with the help of the label diagram, or you can say, as I said, we will be asking this question: why sun appear reddish at the sunrise and sunset? So when the sun is rising, sun is setting, why is the sun appearing reddish or orangish? Now this is what we have discussed this in the previous question also. This is because of the scattering. So light from the sun near the horizon passes through thick layers of air and longer distance. Most of the blue light and shorter wavelength of light are scattered away by these particles. So light of larger wavelength reaches, therefore it gives the reddish appearance. Now let me explain you what I said. See, now the observer is here, you are standing here. Sun is directly above you. So when this sunlight comes, there is no scattering at all. Now you can see the sun the way it is. But when the sun is here, it has to cross when it is appearing or when it is setting down. Light, when it comes, it is scattered. And what light are scattered? Mostly the blue light, that is the light with the wavelength, that is light with shorter wavelength, blue and etc. They are scattered, so they don't reach here. But the lights which are not scattered and which are of higher wavelength, which are reddish in nature or orangish nature, that is seen here. If I say Vibgyor, violet, which is somewhat related to blue somewhere here, they will be, because they have shorter wavelength, they will be scattered. But red, because they have higher wavelength, higher lambda, they will be scattered less. So that is how, because of passing of different layers, and these layers have different properties, that is why there is scattering which is happening here. State the laws of refraction of light. Explain the term absolute refractive index of a medium and write an expression to relate it with the speed of light in vacuum. So this has been repeated. So the law of refraction, there are mainly two: the incident ray, the refracted ray, and the normal to the interface of two media at the point of incidence all lie in the same plane. So here is, say, medium A, and here we have, say, medium B, again medium A. So whenever we have the incident light, now this bends, it bends, and then it comes out like this. So the incident ray, this is the incident ray, and this is the refracted ray, and this is the normal. This normal to the interface of these two media A and B, and at the point of incidence, they all lie in the same plane. That is, there is no other plane where any of these will lie. The next one is, for the light of a given color and for a given pair of media, the ratio of the sine of angle of incidence, that is, you take sine I, this is I, sine of I to the sine of the angle of refraction, that is sine R. This is going to be some constant, and this constant, basically this is called a Snell's law. Snell's law, right? Mathematically we write like this: this is a constant and this is nothing but mu, and sometimes we write it as mu AB, sometimes we write it as mu AB, like this, from A to B, for example this one. So mu is the refractive index. This is a refractive index of B with respect to medium A. So the refractive index of medium with respect to, we are coming to the second one, So the absolute indices of two media A and B are 2.0 and 1.5 respectively. If the speed of light in medium B is, calculate the speed of light. So I'll just come to this. There is a calculation, so let us do it here. And we have to calculate the speed of light in vacuum and medium A. So it is given that the absolute refractive this indices of medium A is mu A2 and mu B is 1.5. And for medium B, as I suggested in the discussion just now, that this 1.5 mu B is C, that is speed of light, by this 2, right? 2 into 10 to the power 8. So this C comes to be speed of light in vacuum. Speed of light in vacuum is coming to be 3 into 10 to the power 8. And this is nothing but, see, what we are trying to suggest here is that this the speed of light in medium B is given, and this is 2 into 10 to the power 8. Okay, 2 into 10 to the power 8, this is given here. Let me write it here. 2 into 10 to the power 8 is given. So what this suggests is that speed of light in vacuum, that is speed of light in vacuum, by speed of light in any medium, say m I am writing, I am just taking my notations, and this is the refractive index, and this is 1.5 here. This is 1.5 here. Now when we take this 1.5, that is medium B, and we have to find out the speed of light in vacuum, and it is the speed of light in medium B is given. So the speed of light C, which is the light in vacuum or speed of light in vacuum, divided by the speed of light which is given in the question, and this equals 1.5, which is our refractive index. So just multiply them, you get C equals 3 into 10 to the power 8, which is true also. When coming to medium A, this is the question medium A, same thing we are going to do, that the speed of light, let us take some other notation. Speed of light C, which we already found in vacuum, by divided by the speed of light in any medium, this equals to the refractive index of A, and this is given as 2 here, medium A, this is given 2, and this speed of light we found to be 3 into 10 to the power 8, and this V. So V can be found out using 3 into 10 to the power 8 by 2, and this is going to be 1.5 into 10 to the power 8. This is the required speed of light in medium A. What is speciation? Speciation. So this is also repeating. See, the speciation, and this word has come from species. The process of formation of one or more species from the existing species is nothing but speciation. And this occurs when the gene pool of a population is somehow reproductively isolated from other sister population of the parent species, and this gene flow no longer occurs between them. Then the population splits into independent species now, which become reproductively isolated from each other. And on the basis of the period taken in speciation, there are two types of mechanism of speciation. One is gradual, one is instantaneous. Gradual can always be divided into allopatric and sympatric. So this is a picture you can put in your answer sheet. Ancestor fringe, this is a natural selection. This has changed. Now it is insect eating. This is type of woodpecker type insect eating and seed eating type of generation. And this is what I was talking about: allopatric, peripatric, parapatric and sympatric. This is the original population, same. Then there was an initial step of speciation. There was a barrier formation. A new niche has entered, and a new niche this has entered, and genetic polymorphism. All these cases I am discussing. Then the evolution of reproductive isolation. This is in isolation. This is again in isolation, and this is adjacent niche within the population inside. And now the new distinct species after some kind of equilibrium of new ranges has come up. Why biodegradable and non-biodegradable wastes should be carded in two separate dustbins. So what do we do generally? We have in our house a dustbin, and in this dustbin we have, generally we put some polythene here, black polythene, and we dump anything or any scrap inside this, any waste, whether it be a food waste, whether it be a plastic waste, whether it be dry waste, everything comes inside, and then we keep it outside our house or somebody takes it away. Now what happens is that it has everything. There are certain things which can be recycled, which can be reused, but the food waste, it spoils, and this can be used again in some way as a manure or some there are so many things it can be used. But when you just mix it, it becomes cumbersome, or it becomes virtually impossible to, because somebody is going to do that, impossible to separate them out, the dry waste from the wet waste. So the time and energy required in segregation may be saved if you do it by yourself, and waste may be disposed of quickly, and they may be reused, non-reused, recycled, like this kind of thing. So these are the dry waste and these are the wet waste. So if waste segregation is done properly, it will be beneficial, because the waste, if you go to Delhi, if you see a pahad, your car is like this, and this is a pahad, and this is nothing, this is not a pahad, this is not a mountain, this is actually waste. So it's better always that, जिसे कहते हैं waste निस्तारण, and that prakriya, this thing can only be done properly when you do it yourself by segregating these two. From the following elements, question number 24. From the following elements, beryllium, F, K, Ca, select the element having one electron in the outermost shell. So among these given elements, this one has one electron in the outermost shell. The electronic configuration is like this, 19 it is. So 2, 8, 8, 1, 10, 8, 18 plus 1, this is 19, right? You can see here also there are two ways of answering this. This is the better way. Two elements of the same group. So since we have this element, these two elements, that is beryllium and calcium, and they belong to the same group, group number 2, because they have two electrons each in the outermost shells. So electronic configuration of beryllium, as you can see, it is 2, 2, and electronic configuration of this Ca calcium is 2, 8, 8, 2. And two elements of the same group we talked about. Write the formula and mention the nature of the compound formed by the union of this K and X. So both element K and X, they have valency 1. So 1 and 1 valency is there. So either KX would be formed or this K and X. So let me just tell you how this works. First of all, the atomic number of element X is given, this X is given 287. Now this 287, that means 7 is the valency. 7 is the valency. So when it is more than 4, we take it as 8 minus 7. So we have 1. 1 as the valency. Now atomic number of K, 19, that is electronic configuration will be what? 2, 8, 8, 1. So the number of valence electron is 1 here, and valency is 1, here also valency is 1. So the formula of the compound formed when this K and X combine is KX. KX. So there is an example also given here. So this KX is ionic in nature. This is electrovalent compound. Electrovalent compound. What is sustainable management? Why is reuse considered better in comparison to recycle? Sustainable management simply means that you manage the resources, which can be mineral, which can be anything, you can name whatever resources we have. May it be degradable, may it be non-biodegradable or biodegradable, whichever you take. Now these resources have to be used right now in a sustainable manner, in a judicious manner, in a limited manner, so that our offsprings, our coming generation would have an approach to them, or would have those resources not being depleted. They are also able to use it. So sustainable management, it is a pattern of management that promises the use of natural resources in such a way that they meet the human needs not only in the present, this is very important, not only today, but tomorrow, thereafter, for long years, but also in future. And when we talk about reuse and recycling, reuse is better than recycling a material. Why? Because recycling is actually you are making a new product out of some raw material, which is your some material. So you have used something, say X thing you have used, now you are trying to make it reusable. So you are putting all this processing, that is you are putting energy, effort, money, etc. But reuse is you already have this X thing, use it in the way it is. That is, it preserves the embodied energy originally used in manufacturing and the money also involved in an item or a product. So reuse also create less air and water pollution than recycling, because once you start processing it, there will be some pollution involved that is there. List any 4 reasons for vegetative propagation being practiced in the growth of some type of plants. Now this question is repeated again and again, that is why we are discussing it again. So 4 reasons why vegetative propagation is practiced in the growth of some type of plant is, first of all, some plant they do not produce seeds. For example, a woman cannot produce a child, she cannot conceive. So she can go for IVF, she can go for say surrogacy. So there are some certain method if a woman cannot produce. So same with the plants. Plants are also living beings. So plants who do not produce seed, the best way is to do some IVF kind of thing, which is vegetative propagation. It is cheaper, easier, and a very fast, rapid method. And we want to maintain the character and traits of certain plants. And the plants produced by this method are genetically similar. And it is used in methods, we have certain methods like layering and grafting to grow many plants like the sugarcane, roses or grapes for agriculture purposes also and for commercial purposes also. I'll show you the diagram also. So this is how we have the parent, and this grows up like this root develops. This is a new formation of plant, and what we are suggesting here is the plant reproduction, vegetative propagation. So we try to do certain, this is not the one way, there are certain way. You can just cut it and put it in the soil to grow, or there are other method also to combine them or to use thread, etc. So this is always a good method, and I gave you an example why we do this. What does HIV stands for is AIDS and infectious disease. List any 4 modes of spreading AIDS. So HIV stands for, this is a virus. So it's an immunodeficiency virus, HIV. AIDS stands for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And usually it don't spread by air, water or touch. What are the ways? And AIDS is not an infectious disease. That is, it's not that communicable. If you sneeze or if you talk or if you touch, it doesn't go like that. But there are certain ways it can spread. First is the unprotected sex intercourse with infected partner. If you have a partner who is infected, you are going to get AIDS for sure. Then this sex, as I said, it can be vaginal, it can be anal, or it can be oral, all type of sex with person which is already HIV positive. Then comes mother to baby by the birth or offering the milk, that is feeding milk, and the blood transmission or blood injection drug use. So if an infected blood is used to a person who is uninfected, he may get the infection because of the infected HIV positive blood. And if you are doing drugs, you exchange a needle, then you are likely going to get HIV. So just refrain and restrict yourself from all these activities so that you don't get this HIV. HIV is a very, very dangerous disease. Your immune system collapses and you die, and this death is dreadful. Write the molecular formula of first two members of homologous series having functional group Cl. Now this is CH3Cl and C2H5Cl molecular formula of first two members of homologous series having functional group Cl. Now this question is also asked having functional group CO. So this is also a solution I have provided so that you can answer in this way also. This is CH3 and CO and OH3. CH3, CO and CH2, CH3. This is for Cl, this is for O. An object of height 2.5 centimeter is placed at a distance of 15 centimeter. Let me show you the answer first and I'll tell you one thing, one at a time. So an object of height 2.5 centimeter, this is the object. It is placed at a distance of 15 centimeter from the optical center O of convex lens. This is a convex lens and this is placed at 15 centimeter. So here is 15 centimeter. This from here to here, it's 15 centimeter. Optical center O is there. Lens is having a focal length of 10 centimeter. So if this is a focus, you have this as 10 centimeter. Draw a ray diagram to find the position and size of the image being formed. Mark optical center O, the principal focus F, and the height of the image on the diagram. So here we have 2.5 centimeter as I just suggested. It is 15 centimeter and this focus is 10 centimeter. Now when this image is formed, this is the optical center and this image is formed like this. It's 5 centimeter. And this is the optical center, all ray go directly. And from here it will bend going from F. All goes from to F. And when they combine, it forms image of 5 centimeter. And this is at a distance of 30 centimeter. The size of the image formed is 5 centimeter beyond the 2F. Okay. An object of 4 centimeter. Now, these questions are almost similar. So let me just, go by that. So an object of height 4 centimeter, this is 4 centimeter object is placed at a distance of 30 centimeter. So this is 30 centimeter. Now I'm talking about this. So here we have from here to here the distance is being shown. From here to here it is 4 centimeter. Now this is 30 centimeter from the optical center O of a convex lens. Of focal length this is 20. So we have to draw a ray diagram to find the position and size of the image being formed. Now I would go back and try to show you that how this has come, how this 30 centimeter has come, and I want you to do this because I'm going to explain the same question, exactly same question here. So I'm going to use this formula and I want you to use this formula to find in the previous question. So here, draw a ray diagram. This is what the position and size of the image being formed. We have to mark this O and F also. Also find the approximate ratio of the size of the image to the size of the object. So this has come time and again. So let me take you to the diagram again. This is your convex lens. This height is 4 centimeter. This is the object. It is 30 centimeter from here. The F is given as 20 centimeter. Now how did we get this 60 centimeter as we got 30 centimeter in the earlier question? And how did we come to this 8 centimeter? So we'll use the formula. See, U is here. So you take is minus 30 by the sign convention. The F is always taken positive. So F is 20 here for the convex lens. So we'll use 1 by F equals 1 by V minus 1 by U. Here we find V as 60. So this V is 60 here. What about the magnification? We know that M is the magnification formula is M equals V by U. That is the height of the image by height of the object. Now this v by u we know, this is 60, this is minus 30. 60 by minus 30, height of image we don't know, but we know the height of object is 4 centimeter. Here height of the image will be minus 8 centimeter. Now we need to see the negative sign also. The negative sign shows that the image formed is inverted and it is real. And the ratio of the size of the image to the size of the object, that is, this has 8, this has 4, 8 by 4 is 2. Now I would encourage you to do the same for this one, right? Same formula you are going to, because this is OR. Either that will come or this will come. So you have to use this formula and try to solve that also. Draw a ray diagram to show the formation of image of an object placed between infinity and the optical center of a concave lens. A concave lens of, so first let us take the first part first, then we'll go to the B1. So we have to draw a ray diagram to show the formation of an image placed between infinity and the optical center of the concave lens. So this is a concave lens. Let me show you here. So this is the formation of the image. This is the formation of the image of an object which is placed between infinity and the optical center. Optical center and infinity, here is an object. This is the optical center of a concave lens. So the image will be obtained in between the optical center and focus. This is focus, this is optical center. Here it will be formed. And the nature of the image form will be virtual, erect and smaller in size. That is diminished in the size. So how does it go? See, there is always a line through optical center which goes directly, and there is a line here which bends, and this bending is we assume it to be coming from the focus F. So when this line and this line intersect, this is the image being formed. Now let us come to the second part. A concave lens of focal length 15 cm forms an image of 10 cm from the lens. We have to calculate the distance of the object from the lens, the magnification of the image formed, and the nature of the image being formed. So you always have a formula. We have to use the conventions also, sign conventions also. So this is focal length of concave lens f minus 15 cm. Image distance is minus 10 cm. We use this formula 1 by f, 1 by v minus 1 by u. Here we get u as minus 30 cm. Magnification is the ratio of the size of the image to the size of the object. So m is v by u. You use the sign also, 10 by 30. So m will be 1 by 3. And since this magnification, as you can see, it is positive and it is less than 1. 1 by 3 is less than 1. So the image formed will be erect and diminished, smaller in size. Draw a ray diagram to explain the term angle of deviation. So here is medium 1 and this is some prism or triangle, or you can take any object. So it's a medium number 2. Again, this is medium number 1. So what is happening here is, this is our incident ray. This incident ray, when it changes the medium, it bends. Now when it bends, when it again re-emerges to the same medium, it again bends because of the difference of the refractive indexes. This we have extended, this also we have extended backward. Now where this intersect, this angle is the angle of deviation. This angle is the angle of deviation. Emergent ray bends at an angle of direction to the direction of the incident ray, and the angle between them is known as angle of deviation. Now I'll take the next one. Why do the component colors of incident white light splits into spectrum while passing through a glass prism? Explain. Before that, I will answer this third one. Draw a labeled ray diagram to show the formation of a rainbow, and this I will extend to the second question. So here if you see, let me show you the picture first. What is happening here is sun. Sun is giving we receive the white light. You know that white light consists of all the lights. That is, right from violet to vibgyo, red. Every light is there, every color is there, shade is there, you can say. But this shade has a different, every shade, every color has a different lambda, wavelength. Now here is a water droplet. Now there are multiple number of water droplets. This is just not one. There are multiple, and same thing is happening to every droplet. Now here again, let me tell you, this is the medium 1, this is the medium 2. So what happens when it enters? Here is at B point there is a refraction, and because of the formation of this droplet, there is a dispersion also. So there is a dispersion, and since this is a round one and there is a total internal reflection, when you know about the relationship between the angle of incidence and angle of reflectance or reflection, so there is a total internal reflection of a spectrum. Now this is not single light, there is a spectrum which actually internally reflect. Now when it comes out of this medium to this medium, it reaches the observer, that is you and me, and we are able to see the red light, white light, violet light, and all other in between. That is how we are able to see the rainbow in the sky. So when a beam of light enters a prism, I'm going to answer this now. So this is a prism. I cannot make it as a 3D because prism is actually 3D. So I'm taking the front view. So when a beam of light enters a prism like this, so it enters, now it gets refracted and splits into 7 constituent colors. As I said, white light has 7 constituent colors. Vibgyor. Okay. Violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. So all these lights have different lambda, and when we know about the scattering, Mie scattering, Rayleigh scattering, all this scattering is happening and all this refraction is happening, and because of this different type of refraction to each lambda, it affects differently. So some bends more, some bend less. So there is if it is bending more, we call it as, because the wavelength, the light and the wavelength depends on the value of refraction. So whichever bends more, and as I can tell you that violet bends the more and then red bends the less. And here is the formation of all these, because these are all bending in a different angle or manner. So we get from V to R, this is Vibgyor. Draw a ray diagram to show the path of the refracted ray in each of the following cases. A ray of incident light on a concave lens. So we have this concave lens. When a ray of incident light on a concave lens passing through its optical center. So this is the optical center. So when it is passing, it goes directly. Where you take any lens, whenever it passes through the optical center, it will just pass by. It will not deviate. When the ray is parallel to the principal axis, so this is your principal axis, and this is a light ray which is parallel to this principal axis. So when it comes, it bends, and the way it bends or refract, it is seen to or assumed to be coming from the focus, principal focus. Third one is the directed towards its principal focus. So when a light is coming and it is directed towards its principal focus, it will become parallel to the principal axis. This one and this one is the converse of each other. A person cannot read newspaper placed nearer than 50 centimeters from his eye. Name the defect of vision he is suffering from. Draw a ray diagram to illustrate this defect. List its 2 possible causes. Draw a ray diagram to show how this defect may be corrected using a lens of appropriate focal length. So here is the scenario. If a person cannot read newspaper place which is nearby, the person is suffering from hypermetropia, that is the far-sightedness, and the person is unable to see the nearby objects distinctly. Mostly after 40 years of age this happens, this is natural, and can only see far by objects with a clear vision. The diagram here, I'll show you how this defect can be analyzed. So we have the object, and here is our eye lens. Now this eye lens, when it try to converge all the light onto the retina, it is not possible here. It actually, the image is formed far behind the retina, so it has to be formed here for the clear vision, but it is not formed here. The 2 possible causes of this hypermetropia is the focal length of the eye lens is too long or decrease in the length of the eyeball. By using this convex lens of appropriate focal length, this defect can be corrected. So this convergence of this light will be on the retina because of this lens which is there. So lens also do the thing which is added up with this eye lens, and finally we get a final you can say image on the retina. Here we can see clearly. So here is it's 50 centimeter, right? The distance of the newspaper. So we can use this. See, if you use this u as minus 25, because it is given like this, and the v is minus 50, we can use 1 by f by 1 by v minus 1 by u, and we have to use this for focal length. We have to use this as negative, and when we compute it, f will be 50 centimeter, and you know how to find out the power. 100 by this f, which is 2 diopter. State any 4 characteristics of the image of an object being formed by a plane mirror. In the second question, that is, this is also the way of asking. There is the same question in the second sentence of this question. So these two we are going to answer together, and this we are going to take in the next just now. So the 4 characteristics of the image formed by the plane mirrors are like this. This is the object, this is the image. The image formed in a plane mirror is virtual. It's not real. It cannot be received on a screen. You cannot have it. The image formed is erect, that is same, that is like this only, erect, and the size is same. If you see, the size is same as object. The image formed is at a distance behind the mirror as the object is in the front of the mirror. So this distance are same. This and this are same. The image formed in a plane mirror is laterally inverted. Laterally inverted means when you are in front of the mirror, you can see your left hand looks right hand and your right hand looks left hand, right? So this is the lateral inversion. Now same thing we are going to take. Here is a question also. So object is placed at a distance of 30 centimeters. So we are taking it the distance as 30 centimeter in front of a convex mirror of focal length 15 centimeters. So we are taking focal length as 15 centimeter. We have to write the 4 characteristics. Let us write. We have already seen just now, and we'll try to find out this v, that is the image distance. So we can use the proper sign convention. So v 1 by v equals 1 by f minus 1 by u. This f is 15, u we are taking minus 30. So v is 10. So the characteristics of the image being formed, let us see it again. First is image is located at a distance of 10 centimeter from the mirror. The magnification is minus v by minus u, which we just found out. It's minus 10 by minus 30.33. Image is erect, image is virtual, as we just saw, and laterally inverted also. Oh no, it's not. It's a convex mirror. So image is erect and virtual. If the image formed by a spherical mirror for all positions of the object placed in front of it is always erect and diminished, what type of mirror is it? Draw a labeled ray diagram to support your answer. So here we have a convex mirror, and the convex mirror always forms an erect and diminished. Erect means straight, means this is not erect, right? This is inverted. This one is erect. And second thing is diminished image, that is the size will be less, irrespective of the position of the object placed in front of it. So let me show you how this can be analyzed. Here we have an object. What happens always, whenever a light ray goes parallel to the principal axis, wherever it goes, it is seen to be coming from the principal focus. So this is focus, so we extended it, and whenever a line is passing through the center of curvature, it goes straight, comes back like this. So it goes straight. So where these two lines intersect, this is your final image. So object which is between pole and the infinity. Coming to this, object is at infinity, so all the rays will be what? It will be parallel to the principal axis. So this comes because it is parallel. So whenever it goes back, it is assumed to be coming from this F, Similarly, this one F. So finally, we see the image at the focus. State the type of mirror used for headlights and rear view mirror in cars and motorcycle. Give reason to justify your answer in each case. So here is the convex mirror, and here we use the car is using the rear view mirror as convex mirror, or the rear view mirror also, on the side view mirror. This is the concave mirror, which is the headlight of the car. So concave here, convex here. So concave, this one, concave mirror is used as the headlight of vehicles as a reflector. So bulb is placed at the focus of a concave mirror so that the light rays coming from the bulb are collected, and after reflection we get a very strong beam of light. Now when it comes to the convex mirror, what do we get? We have the convex mirror. So here, so convex mirror is used as rear view mirrors in vehicles. The other vehicles are always beyond the 2f of convex lens, so we get a diminished and erect image of other vehicle on lens. Hence the lens gives a larger view, field of view, so you can see the larger view here also to the driver, and we can see more vehicles in the lens. Mention the type of mirrors used as the rear view mirrors and the shaving mirrors. List 2 reasons to justify your answers in each case. So these are the rear view mirror of vehicles as we just saw, and this is also shop security cam. It may be asked, it is not asked here, but shop security mirrors also, the traffic mirrors are also like this. So the rear view mirrors are convex mirrors and the shaving mirrors are concave mirrors. Rear view mirrors are convex mirror, the reason being they produce virtual and erect image of the objects, and they have a wider field of view as they are curved outwards like this. And the shaving mirrors, it's not shown here, but those people who shave, they know very well. They use concave mirror. The image formed is magnified so as to see the details of the object clearly. When you are shaving, you need to see the detail. The image formed is virtual erect when the object is placed close to the mirror. In the following ray diagram, the correctly marked angle R. So what all angles are? Let us see. So this is I, incidence, this is emergence, this is D, which is the deviation angle, and this is the R, this is the R. So let us see what it is. See, first of all, this R, the angle of, let us go to the diagram first. See, the angle between this normal and the incident ray is the angle of incidence. The angle between the normal and the emergent ray is the angle of emergence. And the correctly marked angle are like this: E, I, D and R. So R, A, D all are okay. So you can just answer this D1. After tracing the path of a ray of light through a prism, a student marked the angle of incidence, angle of refraction, an angle of emergence and the angle of deviation, which we see in the diagram. The correctly marked angles are what? So if you see this I, this D go up and this R goes down, as we just saw in the previous question. So if you can see here, the answer is B actually, right? So you have to, only I and E are correct. If you see here, only I and E are correct. R and D are actually have changed places. D should be here, R should be here. So this PE, this is the incident ray. This EF is the refracted ray. FS is the emergent ray. This angle 1 is the angle of incidence. Angle R is the angle of refraction. Angle E, this one is the angle of emergence. And this angle D is the angle of deviation. And angle A, of course, is the angle of the prism. After tracing the path of rays of light through a glass slab, let me show you the glass slab first. Okay. You need to concentrate here. We will be discussing this. After tracing the path of rays of light through a glass slab of 3 different angles of incidence, this is angle of incidence, 3 different angle of incidence. A student measured the corresponding values of the angle of refraction and angle of emergence. So this is I, this is R and this is E, and recorded them in the table. What are these correct observations are what? What all in this is the correct observation? So let me tell you first of all that this D is the correct one. First, second and third. Why? First, second, third is okay. This is the angle of incidence. It can be I. Now coming to this R, I and R, this is the refracted angle, and then we go, it comes out again. So this is I, this is E, and this is IE R, this R is equal to this R. Now, what do you see here? For a light passing through a glass slab, there are certain conditions which should hold true. The angle of incidence should be equal to the angle of emergence. This is 30, that is 30 if you see here, right? And then also the angle of refraction increases with the increase in the incident angle. So what are the observations which satisfy these conditions? For a light ray passing through a glass slab, angle E has to be equal or equivalent, almost equivalent like this. And angle R should be, this angle R should be less than I. Also, angle of refraction increases with the increase in the incident angle. So what are the possibilities here? If you see, this is the first observation. So it is 30 and 31. So it's 30, 31 almost same, you can say. And this one 50, 49 is almost equivalent. 40, 40 it's equal. So these are equal. And one more condition is there, as I said, the R should be less than I. So this is less than this one, 31 is less than 50. So all these three conditions are true. After tracing the path of a ray of light passing through a rectangular glass slab for 4 different values of the angle of incidence, a student reported his observation in a tabular form as given below. So we have to find out the best observation. So if you see here, for the best observation, while performing this refraction through the glass slab experiment, there are certain things we need to consider. First thing is, the angle of incidence should be equal or nearly equal to the angle of emergence. And the angle of incidence must be always greater than the angle of refraction. If you see here, all of them almost follow. These are equal, almost equal. And these are less than, R is less than 30, or you can say 30 is greater than 19, 40 is greater than 28, 50 is greater than 36, 60 is greater than 40, right? Now, what is the best one? If you see, this is the refractive index of glass, and we know it is 1.5. We know that the refractive index of glass is 1.5. If you take the first one, that is the mu is computed, or mu refractive index is computed by sin I by sin R. What is sin I here? Sin 30. What is sin I? Sin R, that is sin 19. If you take sin 30 by sin 19, that is this observation, you get 1.5, around 1.5. So this is the best observation. Answer is first one. Study the following diagrams in which the path of a ray, light passing through a glass prism, as traced by 4 students PQR, and which one is the correct? Which one is the correct one? So this one is absolutely correct one. If you see, we have seen a question like this just now. So here, these are different mediums, so it will bend. Again, it will go straight in the same medium. Again, the medium changes, so it bends. So this is the final trace, you can say. And this is the correct trace. So the ray of light, when incident on a glass prism, passes through the medium and then suffers bending of light, which is correctly depicted in this figure, which is our Q, away from the normal. Now same question with inverted. This just has been inverted. If you invert it, it will be exactly like this. Means just upturn this, it will be exactly like this. So while performing the experiment to trace the path of a ray passing through a glass prism, 4 students marked the incident ray and the emergent ray in their diagrams in the manner shown below. Which one is the correct one? So this C is the correct one, as you see here. When light goes from rarer medium to the denser medium, it bends towards the normal, and here is the normal. The light bends away from the normal when it goes from the denser medium to the rarer medium. The condition, this third, fulfill, right? This is the fulfilling one. A student traces the path of a ray of white light through a rectangular glass slab and marks the angle of incidence I, refraction R, and emergence E. Which angles or angle has not marked correctly? So here it is I, it is R, it is E. So if you see here, this C1, what is the problem here? The angle of incidence and angle of emergence have not been marked correctly. They will be marked like this. Okay. Here is a normal, here is a normal. This comes like this, gets refracted and goes like this. Now this angle is I. Here it is marked this as I, which is incorrect. This is correct. So I should be here, not here. Same is this one. This is the angle of emergence. This is not. This is not. So this C is not. I and E are not marked correctly. The correct sequence of angle of incidence and the angle of emergence and angle of refraction and lateral displacement shown in the following diagrams by digit 1, 2, 3, 4 is. So first one by one we'll take. This first one is angle 2. This is the angle of incidence as it is formed between the incident ray, this ray and the normal, this one. So this is angle 2, which is the first one. Then comes the angle 1, this one. This is the angle of emergence as it is formed between the emergent, first is the angle of incidence, then emergence. So this is the angle of emergence. This is formed between the emergent ray and this one, normal, perpendicular to the surface. Angle 4, this angle 4 is the angle of refraction. Angle of refraction as it is formed between the refracted ray and the normal, this one. Then we have 3. This shows the lateral from here. If you extend this line and this line, then the distance between them is the lateral displacement. So the correct answer is 2, 1, 4, 3. Let me show you here again. This is 2, 1, and this is 3, and this is 4. A student focused the sun rays using an optical device X on a screen as shown. From this it may be concluded that the device X is, what is the device X? If we have some device, I don't know what device it is, and if it is converging, which is coming from all infinite rays are converging somewhere. So you can see it, this is 20 centimeter. From this it may be concluded that the device X is convex lens of focal length 20 centimeter, because it is from here to here, it's 20 centimeter. So light rays from infinity are converged here at the focal point of the convex lens. Therefore the focal length of this convex lens is 20 centimeters. So correct option is C. A student focus, same type of question is this one. This is 40 centimeters. Next one is a student focused the image of a distant object using a device X on a white screen S as shown in the figure. If the distance of the screen from the device is 40 centimeters, so assume this also 40, this also 40. Select the correct statement about the device. So same thing here. A convex lens, whenever we have light which are coming from, or the rays coming from the infinity, it converges it to this focus point F. So the answer would be the device, as image is focused on the screen in this case, behind the device X, which is this one. Device X is a lens but cannot be a mirror. Also, convex lens always form the image of the distant object at focus. So the device X must be a convex lens of focal length 40 centimeter. So this is all about the question and answer of this topic. These are board exam questions which are repeated again and again. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.